Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Gossips 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The Forrester mansion was buzzing with tension that no one could quite put a finger on at first, as if the air itself was charged with secrets ready to explode. And yet no one suspected just how earth-shattering the coming revelation would be, because Eric Forrester, usually so composed and commanding in his home and in his company, was about to have the very foundation of his world shaken by a truth he could never have anticipated, a truth that involved the one person he had always trusted most, the woman who had once been his wife and in many ways remained the center of his emotional universe, Taylor Hayes. And the news came at a moment that was perfect in its timing to ensure maximum devastation, because Taylor, standing there in the living room with a calm and almost unnervingly serene demeanor, dropped a bombshell that made Eric's normally sharp mind stumble, made him blink and grasp at his chest in disbelief, as she revealed in her own delicate yet deliberate way that she had a secret lover, someone whose presence in her life had been entirely hidden from the Forrester family and from Eric himself, someone who had, for reasons she seemed determined to keep mysterious for now, been quietly weaving their way into the intimate corners of her life for months, possibly even years. And the shock of this confession hit Eric like a freight train because he had always believed that he knew every nuance of Taylor's heart, that he understood her deepest desires and the boundaries of her affections, yet here she was, calmly but firmly dismantling all of those assumptions, and as she spoke, explaining that the person she had been seeing was someone unexpected, someone intimately tied to the Forrester legacy in ways Eric could hardly fathom. Eric felt the walls of his carefully curated world start to crumble. Not just because of betrayal but because the revelation threatened the very structure of his family, the stability of the company he had built, and even the delicate balance of the social alliances and enmities that had long defined Forrester creations. And the timing could not have been more dramatic because Ridge, Eric's son, had been in the room as well, and while Eric's world teetered on the edge of collapse, Ridge's own sense of reality began to warp as he realized that this secret lover might intersect with his personal ambitions, with his complicated relationships with Brooke, Taylor, and even the ever-present threat of Sheila, who had long been waiting in the shadows to manipulate any crack in the family's armor, and Ridge, who had always prided himself on being perceptive, suddenly found himself floundering as he tried to calculate how Taylor's confession could alter not only his romantic life but the balance of power in the company, the alliances he had painstakingly built, and the reputation he had struggled to maintain within Los Angeles's cutthroat fashion circles, all while Taylor's eyes, calm and unwavering, held a kind of fierce vulnerability that made it impossible for either Eric or Ridge to respond immediately, and for a long moment, silence reigned in the room, thick and suffocating, as if the very air had conspired with Taylor to heighten the gravity of the moment, and then Eric, always the man of authority, tried to gather his thoughts, to compose himself in the face of what could only be described as an emotional ambush, yet every word he attempted to form stumbled in his throat, his voice caught between disbelief, anger, and an aching sense of betrayal because how could Taylor, the woman he had loved through decades of trials and triumphs, harbor such a secret, and why had she chosen this exact moment to reveal it, knowing full well that the impact would reverberate through every branch of the Forrester family tree, from Ridge to Thorne, from Steffi to Finn, and even the newest members like Kelly and Hayes, whose innocent lives were now about to be intertwined with the adult complexities of passion, secrecy, and forbidden desire, and Ridge, whose own ambitions and insecurities were as volatile as his temper, felt his knees grow weak as he absorbed the implications, knowing that this revelation could destabilize everything he thought he controlled, that Taylor's hidden lover might not only challenge his position in the company but also shake the very ground upon which his relationship with Brooke had been precariously balanced, because Brooke, who had been away at a charity gala, could return at any moment, unaware of the seismic shifts that had just occurred. And the thought of confronting Brooke with Taylor's betrayal, without even knowing who the lover was, made Ridge's mind spin, imagining the arguments, the confrontations, the emotional explosions that could make the last family feud seem like child's play, and Taylor, sensing the storm she had unleashed, spoke with a quiet authority, explaining that while her heart had been torn in different directions, her loyalty to her own truth demanded honesty at last, and Eric, still struggling to reconcile the image of the woman he had built his dreams around with this new reality, could feel the tension ripple outward, like a stone cast into a pond, touching everyone present, from the loyal staff who had overheard fragments of the conversation, to the friends and associates who would soon learn, through the inevitable cascade of gossip and revelation, that the Forrester family's personal lives were as complex, dramatic, and interwoven as the designs they created, and Ridge, realizing that he needed to act to maintain some semblance of control, began strategizing silently, weighing his options, considering whether to confront Taylor directly, or to use this revelation to his advantage in the ongoing battle for both familial dominance and professional supremacy, because at Forrester Creations, nothing was ever just personal. Every decision, every secret, every romantic entanglement had implications for the company, and Taylor's confession had just introduced an element of unpredictability that could either be catastrophic or, in Ridge's cunning mind, potentially advantageous if leveraged correctly. And as Eric's emotions oscillated between betrayal, heartbreak, and a lingering protective instinct for Taylor, he realized that the coming days would demand a delicate balance of diplomacy, confrontation, and strategic thinking, knowing that the fallout from Taylor's secret lover revelation would not be confined to mere whispers in the hallways but would erupt in full force, impacting board meetings, social events, and the fragile alliances within the extended Forrester family. And as the night drew on, the tension only thickened because Taylor, fully aware of the storm she had triggered, remained poised, yet internally bracing herself for the inevitable confrontations, the heartbreak she might cause, and the possibility that some relationships could never recover, all while Eric, usually the embodiment of control and authority, felt the foundations of his carefully ordered life quake, realizing that the woman he had loved, trusted, and built a family with had just reminded him in the most profound and dramatic way possible that love, passion, and loyalty were never simple, that secrets had the power to destroy or redefine reality, and that in the world of the bold and the beautiful, even a single revelation could ripple across decades of intertwined histories, challenging every assumption, every alliance, and every heart, leaving Eric stunned, Ridge reeling, and the entire Forrester dynasty on the precipice of dramatic upheaval, because Taylor's secret lover was more than just a hidden romance. It was a catalyst that would force every character to confront the truth about themselves, their desires, and the fragile nature of trust. And as Eric finally found his voice, trembling with a mixture of anger, fear, and a reluctant curiosity, he knew that the coming weeks would be a battlefield of hearts and minds, where strategy, emotional resilience, and the ever-present pulse of fashion and family ambition would collide in ways that no one, not even the seasoned Forrester patriarch, could have predicted. And yet, despite the chaos, a spark of possibility remained, because in the world of Forrester Creations, where every design told a story and every relationship wove a tapestry of passion and power, the revelation of Taylor's secret lover was both a threat and an opportunity, an emotional crucible in which Eric, Ridge, Taylor, and everyone connected to them would be tested, reshaped, and for better or worse, forced to confront the ultimate question. In a world of beauty, ambition, and betrayal, can love truly survive when the truth finally comes out? And so, as the camera panned over the Forrester mansion, the tension almost tangible, viewers everywhere were left on the edge of their seats, hearts pounding, desperate to know how Eric would process this stunning revelation, how Ridge would maneuver in response, how Taylor would navigate the consequences of her honesty, and how the intricate web of passion, power, and legacy at the heart of Los Angeles's most famous fashion dynasty would continue to unfold in the shocking, unpredictable, and emotionally charged saga that is The Bold and the Beautiful. As the initial shock of Taylor's confession lingered in the air like a heavy fog, Eric's mind raced to comprehend not just the revelation itself, but the rippling consequences that threatened to upend everything he had worked for, everything he had cherished, because in the Forrester world, every secret had a way of surfacing at the worst possible moment, and now the revelation that Taylor had been secretly involved with someone entirely unexpected cast a long shadow over the very core of the family, a shadow that stretched from the high ceilings of the mansion to the gleaming floors of Forrester Creations, where board members, designers, and assistants would soon sense a tremor in the usually composed leadership, and Ridge, standing near the grand staircase, felt a mixture of fear, rage, and strategic opportunity swirling inside him, knowing that Taylor's lover could be someone whose presence intersected directly with the company's business dealings, someone whose influence could alter deals, creative decisions, and the power dynamics that Ridge had spent years navigating. And as he absorbed this possibility, his eyes darted to Eric, who was visibly struggling to maintain his stoic facade, his hands clenching and unclenching as if the very walls around him were closing in, while Taylor remained almost eerily composed, her voice measured but carrying the weight of the truth she had finally allowed to surface, and in that moment, the house seemed to vibrate with unspoken tension as though every piece of furniture, every framed photograph, every piece of artwork on the walls had absorbed the emotional energy of decades of family triumphs, betrayals and affairs, now reacting to this explosive new revelation in ways that left the room almost physically charged, while the staff, hidden in corners or lingering in hallways, could feel the tremor of shock and whispered speculations beginning to ripple outward, because in a place like Forrester, where personal and professional lives were intricately entwined, one revelation could trigger a cascade of consequences capable of redefining alliances, friendships and loyalties, and Ridge, whose mind never rested, immediately began calculating potential outcomes, weighing the possibility that Taylor's lover might not only disrupt Eric's emotional equilibrium, but also provide him with an opening to assert influence over company decisions, manipulate his father's responses, and subtly shift the balance of creative control in his favor. Yet even as he considered these tactical angles, a part of him recoiled at the emotional implications, because the revelation also carried a deeply personal sting. It undermined the trust that had long governed his relationship with Taylor, with Brooke, and with the very notion of family solidarity, and as Ridge's thoughts spiraled, he realized that this secret had the potential to fracture not just professional hierarchies but romantic entanglements as well. Destabilizing Brooke's carefully managed positioning with him, the lingering tensions between Steffi and Finn, and the delicate web of interactions with Hope, whose involvement with Liam was already fraught with its own emotional volatility, all of which meant that Taylor's admission was not an isolated incident but a domino that could trigger chaos across multiple lives at once. And Eric, sensing the tremors of disruption not just in his company but within the intimacy of his own family, struggled to find words, his usually commanding voice betraying a wavering undercurrent of disbelief, hurt, and a profound sense of personal betrayal, because he had always believed Taylor's heart, had trusted her implicitly, and now, faced with the undeniable evidence of a hidden romantic life, he realized that even the most carefully maintained assumptions about loyalty and devotion could be shattered in a single moment. And Taylor, aware of the intensity of the storm she had unleashed, attempted to frame her confession with a sense of honesty, emphasizing that her actions were driven by complex emotions, circumstances that neither Eric nor Ridge could fully understand yet, and a need to reconcile parts of herself that had long been ignored or suppressed. And as she spoke, Eric's mind flashed to every memory they had shared: the weddings, the hospital crises, the fashion shows, the long nights of planning Forrester Creation's future, and he felt the weight of 1,000 small betrayals, miscommunications, and secrets accumulating to form a mountain he now had to confront, while Ridge, unable to remain passive, began to pace subtly, as if the act of movement could help him process the implications, calculate strategic responses, and anticipate Taylor's next words, knowing that every detail she revealed could be leveraged, yet simultaneously aware that the emotional fallout could render any logical maneuver irrelevant if not handled with care. And the room seemed to contract as Eric finally spoke, his voice trembling with a mixture of anger and sorrow, demanding to know the identity of Taylor's lover. While Taylor hesitated, the pause stretching like an eternity, signaling both the gravity of the secret and the inevitability that when the name finally emerged, it would alter relationships in ways that none of them could fully prepare for. And when the name was finally revealed, a collective gasp seemed to reverberate through the walls, as if the mansion itself had been programmed to react to scandal, because the identity of the lover intersected with multiple Forrester storylines, connecting back to past betrayals, romantic entanglements, and business rivalries in ways that made the revelation even more incendiary. And Eric's hands fell to his sides, the color draining from his face, as memories of past confrontations, old rivalries, and unresolved emotions surged to the forefront, each one demanding recognition and response. While Ridge's jaw tightened, his mind racing through permutations of potential outcomes, considering everything from boardroom leverage to personal vendettas, realizing that the path forward required both diplomacy and decisive action, because Taylor's secret was not simply a matter of private emotion but a variable capable of reshaping the balance of power, influence, and trust across the Forrester empire. And outside the mansion, the ripple effect was already beginning. As whispers in the city's elite social circles hinted at scandal, And in the studios, designers and assistants who had sensed the tension were beginning to speculate, the network of information rapidly expanding, threatening to turn a single revelation into a full-blown crisis that could compromise not just familial relationships but the brand and reputation of Forrester Creations itself. And Eric, usually so unflappable in the face of public scrutiny, found himself confronted with the impossibility of separating personal anguish from professional stakes, as the very essence of what he had built, both in love and in business, now seemed vulnerable to collapse, while Taylor, recognizing the gravity of her confession, continued to speak with a measured honesty, attempting to navigate the turbulent waters she had stirred, explaining motivations, regrets, and a longing for clarity in her own heart. Yet even her composure could not fully mitigate the cascading emotional shockwaves as Ridge, strategically inclined yet emotionally affected, began formulating plans, weighing every potential move, every potential revelation, considering the implications for his relationship with Brooke, his interactions with Steffi, Finn, and Hope, and his ability to assert creative and managerial control within Forrester Creations, and all the while Eric, battling internal conflict, oscillated between protecting Taylor, confronting her lover, and maintaining his authority in the company and the family, realizing that each choice carried immense consequences, because in the world of the bold and the beautiful, every personal decision intersected with professional outcomes, and no secret remained contained, especially when it involved love, power, and betrayal. And as night fell, the mansion felt alive with tension, the walls bearing witness to the storm of emotions that could redefine relationships, alliances, and the very essence of the Forrester legacy. And outside, the Los Angeles skyline gleamed innocently, unaware of the personal and professional upheaval inside, yet ready to amplify every whisper into a public spectacle, as friends, family, and rivals alike would soon learn. And Ridge, determined to retain some semblance of control, knew that the coming days required careful maneuvering, strategic foresight, and emotional resilience, while Eric realized that to navigate this crisis, he would need to balance love, trust, and authority. Taylor braced herself for the consequences of her honesty, and the Forrester dynasty stood on the precipice of a dramatic upheaval, where secrets, ambition, and the pursuit of desire would collide with the family's legacy, reputation, and very hearts. And in this charged environment, every conversation, glance, and decision could ignite further drama, making the revelation of Taylor's secret lover not just a moment of personal heartbreak, but the catalyst for a series of confrontations, alliances, and betrayals that would test every character's capacity for forgiveness, strategy, and survival. Because in the bold and the beautiful, love was never simple, loyalty was always conditional, and the truth, once revealed, could transform everything in ways no one could predict, leaving Eric stunned, Ridge calculating, Taylor vulnerable yet defiant, and the entire Forrester empire poised for one of the most dramatic chapters in its storied history, where every heart, every ambition, and every secret was now on the line. And as the episode would unfold, viewers everywhere would be left breathless, desperate to witness the fallout of a revelation that had the power to redefine love, trust, and power in the world of the bold and the beautiful. And as the tension in the Forrester mansion lingered like a tangible force, Eric struggled to regain even a semblance of control over his thoughts, feeling simultaneously betrayed, bewildered, and alarmed at how one revelation could unravel the threads of trust and stability he had spent decades weaving, while Ridge, whose mind was a constant storm of calculation and instinct, continued to weigh every possible consequence, imagining how Taylor's lover might influence future company projects, family loyalties, and even romantic entanglements that had already been delicately balanced. And Taylor, sensing both the storm she had unleashed and the fragile state of those around her, remained composed outwardly but internally braced for the inevitable confrontations, the heartbreak, and the difficult conversations that would follow, because she knew that honesty once spoken could not be undone. And yet she also recognized that revealing the truth was necessary for her own sense of integrity and for any hope of resolving the tangled emotions swirling around her. While Eric's gaze drifted to the portraits of past Forrester triumphs lining the walls, reminders of all the times the family had survived storms before, yet never one of this magnitude. And Ridge, realizing the opportunity hidden within chaos, silently formulated strategies to protect his ambitions while navigating the emotional fallout. And in the quiet moments between words, the mansion seemed to hold its breath, aware that the next steps taken by Eric, Ridge, and Taylor would ripple outward through every corner of the family and company, affecting not only personal relationships but business dealings, public perception, and the delicate equilibrium of trust and loyalty that defined the Forrester legacy. And as night settled outside, the city unaware of the emotional tempest within, the three of them, Eric stunned, Ridge calculating, and Taylor resolute, stood at the precipice of irreversible change, knowing that the revelation of a secret lover was more than just scandalous news. It was the spark that could ignite a chain reaction, forever altering the course of their lives, their family, and the empire they had all fought so hard to sustain.